I think he's starting to look incredibly weak as he continues to cry about the election. And you know what? Like I can almost feel the Republicans. And when I say that, I'm referring to anecdotal evidence when I see our guys interviewing them, other media interviewing them, and I'm seeing it a little bit in the polling, but more in the anecdotal in this case. Starting to say like, let's wrap this thing up. I mean, right? And we're still complaining about that election.
You want Donald Trump to run again?
I would like to see him run again. I think he's probably getting too old. However, if he endorsed another candidate, I would vote for them, and I would vote for him.
Okay, now what's the big seller?
The big seller right now is Let's Go Brandon hats and Trump 2024 hats.
How's business going for you?
Business could always be a little bit better, but in terms of like the apparel, because we have several different businesses, the apparel is very strong right now.
And the Trump 24, a lot of people want Trump to run again, right?
I believe they do.
Do you want him to run again? It'd be good for business.
It'd be good for capitalism and it'd be good for this country because I believe he does stand for everything that we believe in as Americans. But tone it down a little bit.
Tone it down, okay. Like
it's coming from a Marine Corps veteran who we're all about turning it up a little bit, but you want to galvanize the entire country and not alienate 48, 50, 49, 50% of the country.
So, do you think Trump should run again in 2024?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think his ego will allow him not to run, but I think Ron DeSantis would be an excellent choice. I think Candace Owens would be an excellent choice. I think he has a lot of people that he could run with. I'd be really proud of him if he would step down in the VP role, and honestly, I'd love to see him take over as Speaker of the House. That would be ideal. But I want him to stay in politics because, again, you don't have to support all the words the man says, but I believe what he did for our country was good.
So let's say he runs in 2024. Let's say he wins. What's the first thing you want him to do?
Maybe start to work on the health care plan.
What's your ideal health care plan?
So, honestly, I think that's maybe why that didn't get done I think that's maybe why it didn't get done in the first 4 years. It's a pretty complicated problem. So I wish I knew the answer to it. I do believe in health care for all. But I think there are better ways to do it, just what those ways are. If I knew the answer to that, I'd be running.
Donald Trump, is he a fading brand? That was something that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell apparently was talking about behind closed doors. And now it turns out that the Republican electorate might be thinking the same thing. So look, this is one poll. It was done by Echelon, which, to be quite honest with you, I hadn't really heard anything about until I read about this poll. But I do want to give you the results because the findings are fascinating. They talked to Republican or right-wing leaning voters, and here's what they found: that a whopping 61% of Republican voters want Donald Trump to face a primary opponent or not even run at all in 2024. So only 30% replied with, "I'd like to see Donald Trump running unopposed," while 39% said, quote, "I'd like to see Donald Trump running and other major candidates running too." So look, I think that that's not that unsurprising, right? Trump has always managed to capture 30% of the Republican electorate. Those are like the diehard Trump fans, and you're still seeing those numbers reflected in this poll. Another 22% though said, "I'd like to see Donald Trump not run," which is also interesting. By the way, 16% said that they will definitely vote for another Republican candidate.
Okay, so these numbers are real and they're beginning, maybe the beginning of a trend where Republican voters are starting to tire a little bit of Donald Trump. I'm gonna give you some other numbers that show you that it's just the beginning. It's not, this is not the iceberg, okay? But overall, it's real. Whereas the other polls earlier, we showed you why they weren't real. Anytime they'll be like, oh, they questioned Donald Trump. No, they didn't. You dive into the polls, you see, no, at the end of the day, they still love Trump. In this case, why am I saying it's real? Well, 22% saying they'd prefer that Donald Trump didn't run. That's a small number, obviously, but it's much larger than it used to be. And remember, Trump got 93% of the Republican vote in 2020 after he had said every despicable thing in the world, every stupid thing in the world, and still 93% of Republicans voted for him. So 22% saying, I'd rather have it be someone else. That's a real number. It's the beginning of something that could be a trend. All right, then the second one is 39% saying I'd like to see Donald Trump running and other major candidates running too. Okay, that one's not as convincing because it's hard to say, I don't want anybody else running. And
Right.
so still 30% of the Republican Party say, I don't want to hear any choices.
It's crazy.
I don't want to hear about anything else. I just want Trump. So that's still, his base is really strong still, but it's getting knocked down a little bit. Okay, now here's the number that you should really be looking out for. That shows you he's still in charge, don't get us wrong. 59% said they will either definitely or probably vote for Trump. So that's still 6 out of 10 Republican voters saying, no, Trump's my boy, Blue, okay? And so that, he ain't gonna lose. If he runs in a primary today, and it won't be today, but if he ran today, he would win, and he'd win pretty easily. In fact, last one here, 40% of Republicans say that they would definitely vote for Trump in a Republican primary, definitely. So it's not really 30% that are saying Trump for sure, it's actually 40%, right? So if you start with an immovable 40% and you're already at 60% saying yes, if we had the primary today, it would be a landslide. He would win easily.
Yep.
But if these numbers keep moving, by the time we actually have the primary in a couple of years, they might have moved enough where he might lose.
Yeah, I think it really depends on how the election, especially the Republican primary, is covered by the press. Because if they cover the primaries the same way they did in 2016, I have no doubt that Trump is gonna win the primaries. Because look, what's the appeal of Donald Trump for his base? It's the fact that he riles mainstream media and liberals up, right? He gets them upset. So he's gonna say outrageous things, people are gonna get angry, and the very nature of liberals being angry makes his base love him more, makes the Republican voters love him more. So that's my theory on it. We'll see how it plays out. Because in terms of like actually improving people's lives, I mean, I feel like they'd be hard pressed to give specific examples of how the Trump presidency improved their lives.
Yeah.
Inequality significantly widened under the Trump administration. He continued with the same failed foreign policies. In fact, he expanded the drone strikes that we experienced under the Obama administration. What he did to farmers with the trade war, the empty-headed, aimless trade war that he engaged in was awful, and it really caused some pain and suffering for farmers. So I really think the appeal for Donald Trump is just keep it real. He's funny and entertaining, and I think people like him for that reason as well. Don't hate me for admitting that; it's just the truth. But also, he infuriates the people working in the very institutions that have failed the American people.
Yeah, well, look, so last two things here. One is he's funny like Groucho Marx is funny. I mean, you laugh at him as he does pratfalls. He doesn't mean to do pratfalls, he's just not that bright. So
sometimes though, he means to be funny and he is funny, right?
Okay, that's, in my opinion, that's more rare, but there's tons of times where you're like, I can't believe he said something that dumb, and you laugh your ass off.
Sure.
And even the right wingers laugh, but they forgot that they're laughing because he's dumb. Okay, anyways, but guys, here's why there's a tiny bit of hope here. If the numbers do seem to be moving a little bit, so why? This is my theory. I think he's starting to look incredibly weak as he continues to cry and cry and cry about the election. And you know what? Like I can almost feel the Republicans, and when I say that, I'm referring to anecdotal evidence when I see our guys interviewing them, other media interviewing them, and I'm seeing it a little bit in the polling, but more in the anecdotal in this case. Starting to say like, let's wrap this thing up. I mean, right? And we're still complaining about that election, right? And they loved it. They loved it for a long time. But I might be wrong, but I'm getting the sense that it's starting to wear thin. And you think he's gonna stop? He can't stop. He's not constitutionally capable of it.
No.
So for the next 3 years, he will do a tsunami of crying. And there's some chance that 2.5 years in, even the Republican voters are gonna be like, I'm a little exhausted from his crying.